Thanks, Raj, for inviting me. Thanks everybody for being here. So this is not a not a technical talk. Raj asked me to talk about the research landscape in Europe. So I comply to that wish and try to give you a good overview what's happening. So there are basically three blocks in this presentation. The first one is looking at the European Union computing continuum infrastructure. This is what is the official name. I will talk about that. And then some research projects, and then finally some shameless plug of what I'm doing myself. So the European Commission basically talks about a shift in the data paradigm, which means basically moving from a centralized perspective, what is typically happening in the cloud computing era, which we have done in the last 15 years or so, distribute that to the edges of the network. This is what is currently happening. In this slide here, you can see what it actually means to separate the computing, where everything is done more or less nowadays in the cloud, and split that over the whole continuum of the infrastructure. That contains the IoT part on the left-hand side, up to the data center on the right-hand side. So that's the idea. You can actually allow for very interesting use cases where we have lower latencies predominantly. Those lower latencies require processing on the edges of the network. And this is why this is important. And when you look at the computing continuum, some people also call it edge cloud continuum. I personally like to call it the computing continuum because there are many different flavors of edge. It's like ice cream because you can have different flavors and there might be very different actually. So edge is not edge always, it's not the same. So you can have very tiny devices which are very computationally weak up to very computationally powerful. And this is when you look at this slide here, you can see that you can have edge devices on the left-hand side, typically in the IoT domain or further down to the right, which have different powers. And that includes fog domain and then ultimately the cloud domain, but it doesn't stop there. In fact, you can even go further and look at the connection between the edge, the cloud, and high performance computing and even quantum computing, which is more tricky. I'll talk about this here now. But when we talk about edge AI, I think if we talk about really the whole spectrum, because everything that Raj was mentioning before about quality, learning, and these issues, they actually go across the whole spectrum of this. This is why this is relevant here. Now, the data storage and the processing of everything that I was just mentioning here is quite international. In other words, put it differently, we are in a kind of a trouble in Europe, and that includes the UK here. And that is that we are actually at the mercy of the US companies. If you look at the scenario nowadays, it's really being done predominantly by 80% of the global revenues coming from the US companies. And we can assume that this will also be the case for the edge infrastructure as well, if we don't steer against that trend. So in other words, what this EdgeAI hub is doing together with the industrial partners is extremely important because we need to counter that trends that only the big companies can deliver technologies which solve this problem. So you see, these are the usual suspects in the domain. So we have to work together. We need to collaborate to provide infrastructure for EdgeAI. Otherwise, these guys will take over. And from the business model side, there are more incentives to do everything on the cloud than on the edge as well. So it's a little bit tricky. We have to figure out good business models, how to include edge AI in this overall cloud continuum infrastructure. So the EU knows this, understands this, and invests a lot of money, 10 billion euro in this type of technologies from the edge to the cloud, and has created a European Alliance on Industrial Data, Cloud, and Edge in order to address this problem. And they have also created a program called the Path to the Digital Decade, and they want to put at least 10,000 edge computers across Europe, edge nodes. So their definition of edge nodes just reflected by that number means that they have more powerful computers as a vision. So it's not really the tiny edge computers. It looks like they have more on the bigger scale in mind. So this is quite relevant, I think, for the hub here. So they have funded also a number of research projects in Horizon 2020 and also now in the Horizon Europe program. So essentially there are kind of three lines. One is geared towards the edge. It's called the next generation IoT. There are different instruments. Here there are like 5 projects. I don't go into the details here in the funding, under funding. Then there are projects on the cloud, which is called cloud computing towards a smart computing continuum. These are 7 projects. And then there are projects on the software technology side, which are 6 projects, which are dealing with open source technologies for cloud, edge, etc. So there are a number of projects currently being funded by the European Union, which address some of the aspects that Raj was mentioning before. So it is recognized by the Commission that it is highly relevant for the European industry. And as you can see here, it's quite a substantial amount of money. So the European Union tries to support these ideas, these projects with a data strategy, also going towards open source and things like this to reinforce the collaboration between the public and the private initiatives across cloud and edge computing, reaching the IoT as well. And it has created an initiative called European Cloud Edge and IoT Continuum Initiative, which tries to bring together all of these things that I was talking about so that there can be good benefits from these interactions between these different projects. Because without these interactions, collaborations, basically they just dissipate. You just have research projects, nothing happens afterwards. So they understand that now and they try to basically help with creating a more sustainable ecosystem in the long run. They also included a application area similar to what Raj was mentioning before in his presentation. So there are different types where edge makes sense, a lot of sense, from agriculture to energy, utilities, healthcare, manufacturing, mobility, and logistics, which are all very relevant here. And they're all being mentioned in these documents of the European Union. But I have to say that what is really crucial here is the business model. Every time, and this will be also very relevant here for the hub, I think that developing the business models, which actually look into these different verticals and try to support these different businesses with a sustainable business model is really tricky because they come with very different flavors. So agriculture is very different from mobility and logistics. How do these business models look like? How do these different stakeholders become part of this ecosystem? How do they get reinforced with the money flow? How does it work? It's all up to discussion. We need to figure out what are the best ways to do it. If you look at it from the mobile computing perspective, there is basically just a very simple model of the business model, which is like the App Store. And the App Store provider basically just gets 30% of the revenue, for example. That's it. But I think for Edge AI, we have much more opportunity, many more opportunities to actually think more carefully about what is a good sustainable business model for that. And it's up to discussion. There's nothing being really developed at this point in time. So to end my presentation, so in my team, we are also working in this space of Edge AI, of course. And we have an EU project called Intent, which just started recently, in which we try to bring in AI into what we call here a cognitive computing continuum by bringing the intelligence part into the edges, but not just the edges, but also the whole computing continuum as well. And these are the number of partners. So overall, I think the topic of edge AI in the computing continuum is highly relevant for industry, but also academia. And what is the challenge from the academic side is that it includes the AI part with all of its hype. And as Raj was saying, we have to move away from simply looking at it from the LLM perspective, but also from different methodological perspectives, and combine it with the systems world. And this is what is currently missing, because the typical AI researchers are not looking at the world of systems. Typical systems people don't look so much into the world of AI. But since the funding goes there, I guess that this will change in the next couple of months. With that, I thank you very much for your attention.